It appeared that we would be treated as the nation's guest this time. I look forward to good news at the meeting. During the last temporary meeting, they agreed to let the Tempest Federation join the council. During tomorrow's meeting, they plan to question you first before making the official verdict. Bingo. Those two idiots were mostly oblivious of the situation and made nonsense predictions. It was correct of him to have ignored them. I see, as expected. I nodded, pretending that I had been aware of the situation the whole time. Hinata looked at me somewhat doubtfully. Report. Based on the current situation, the only possible explanation is that individual Hinata Sakaguchi seems to be saying how very astute of you. What? Then wouldn't my smug look just now have made me look like an idiot? Regardless, since Hinata explained the proceeding, I couldn't help but imagine what they would ask. The council would probably ask about the Magi train, or perhaps to purchase the weapons displayed by Kurobi before, or even want us to showcase our research results. Now that I'd thought up all these different potential explanations for their summoning me, it was troubling. However, Raphael-san said that it couldn't think of any other reason. If that were the case, I would have preferred it to tell me from the beginning. I coughed dryly before taking a sip of coffee. Hopefully I could fool her with this. Never mind. Right now, you still aren't officially acknowledged, so don't get careless. You're a demon lord. I figure that there will be questions that would anger you during the meeting, but I trust that you won't fall for it. I was not sure if I managed to fool her, but Hinata didn't seem to care. If I were to make a mess of this meeting, it would make her position troublesome, since the Holy Empire of Lobelia supported the Tempest Federation and would suffer as well. She was worried that such a thing would happen and reminded me beforehand. I was quite surprised. I was as tempered as Buddha. It was not that easy to piss me off. You're worrying too much for nothing. I'm not like you. I'm a mature adult who knows how to socialize with people. Huh? You want to fight or something? I'm game. Ah, no, that's not what I meant. See how easily she got pissed. That was the difference between Hinata and I. But it wasn't good for my health to keep poking this hornet nest, so I decided to keep quiet on that out of fear. I suppose. They're treating us like they're national guests, which, to be honest, concerns me. I'm guessing that they have some requests in mind. Surely, Sally has found some information as well. Yes. I have some intel. This includes the views of all nations' royalty as well as those of their subordinates. Brief in detail later on. Understood. Not that I needed it, just Raphael-san. However, there's something I wish to ask Hinata Dono. What is it? Oh? And just as I thought that things were about to settle, it seemed that Sae had his mind on something else. He ordered his subordinates to travel around the continent to conduct all sorts of investigation. Apart from investigating the shadow committee that allegedly ruled the Western nations, they were also collecting intelligence in other countries. I'd gotten used to it at this point, to have Sae and the others investigate whenever I needed to know something. Because it was Sae on the job, surely, he must have heard some interesting rumors. There were plenty of ministers from different nations that wished to exploit our nation. Those people said that. Let me guess, they want you guys to become a part of the defensive network against the Eastern Empire. How impressive. That's exactly the case, Hinata Dono. Hinata gave the correct answer before Sae even finished. In other words, Hinata knew full well about the situation. Do you mean that they wish for our aid with an upcoming war? Even so, aren't we only obligated to help fortify Bloomond? Benimaru also analyzed the situation by himself and teased Sae for worrying too much. Benimaru had a point as well, but the problem actually lied in the lead up to the war. Hinata had probably predicted how things would develop in the future. And since she didn't seem concerned at all, it meant that her conclusion was the same as mine. I fully relied on Raphael-san's prediction, as it had very high credibility. And with Hinata's prediction aligning with ours, that's most likely how things would develop. In order to prove that, I needed to verify it now. Benimaru has a point, we have only signed treaties with the Kingdom of Bloomond. But before that, I don't think we need to worry about going to war with the Empire. Could you tell me the reason? Sae asked me, looking very concerned. This guy was, as usual, serious when it came to work. To reassure Sae, I decided to give him the conclusion deduced by Raphael. First of all, the most important thing is that we must think in the Empire's perspective. Assuming the Empire was to invade the Western nations, what type of strategy would they employ? Essentially, the key lay in the motive behind their invasion. But that was an issue for another time. If they were to go to war, the most important step was to choose how they would invade. They would need to cross the Great Jura Forest, or cross the steep mountain roads of the Kanat Mountains. Their last option was to take the sea route, which aligned with the old trade route we used before we constructed our roads. While it also depended on the size and scale of the Empire's expedition army, either route would pose problems. The sea route would be challenging. Distance-wise it could lead them to the Kingdom of Bloomond. Well, it was safe traveling near the coast. If you went too far into deeper waters, you would run into the nests of large sea monsters that were over rank A. Even if they were to navigate through them with a large fleet of ships, safety could not be guaranteed. Even the tasty spear tuna was extremely dangerous in the sea. It could travel and attack at a speed of 60 knots, equivalent of 30 meters per second. This monster could create giant holes in a ship. Moreover, don't just think that you could ensure safety on a steel-armored ship. Because among the many giant sea monsters, the spear tuna was considered merely a third-rate monster. The kraken might not be particularly intelligent, but it was rumored that their attack instincts against people invading their domain was very strong. If a ship were to be struck by its over 10-meter-long body, no battleship would be able to escape the fate of sinking. Only traders who knew the sea route well would consider traveling by sea. Then perhaps the mountain route would be preferable, but near the Kanit Mountains, there was a hostile area called the Den of Dragons. If it were only a caravan, the dragons would probably close one eye. But if a large number of people were to approach, that would provoke the dragons. They were not humans, so it was impossible to negotiate. If the dragons thought that the visitors had harmful intent towards them, that would be their end. The dragon clan were led by the prideful dragon lords. If the dragons decided to target them, the Eastern Empire's army would already be half dead before they could start a war against the Western nations. That was if they won, however. It'd be absolutely hilarious if they were to lose. Moreover, after defeating the dragons, they would have to face the Western nations themselves, which from there on would be the start of the actual war. The military operation of traversing the steep mountains would give them hell already. And it will also depend on the time period. They could only pass during the short summer period. During wintertime, the mountains would be sealed by extreme weather and snow, which was difficult to overcome even with magic. Narrowly speaking, the army would avoid marching in this route. In the end, this left only the Great Jura Forest route to be viable. But that wasn't very simple either. Now I, the Demon Lord, run the Great Jura Forest. Moreover, there's also Valdor. Indeed, we have circulated rumors that Valdor's Sama has been revived. And now even the Empire would not dare to take a move without much consideration. They were already afraid of a sealed Valdor's Sama, so they wouldn't begin to know what to do now. Indeed, it was. We had spread the rumors that the Pharmus army was wiped out by Valdor. Surely, the Empire heard this news as well, and its ambitions would be set back as a result. After all, for the longest time, the Empire had always been afraid of Valdor. That was why they had acted with extreme caution. Had they acted sooner, we possibly would have been devastated already. But now we had Valdor at our back, Raphael's, and therefore could conclude confidently that there was no reason for concern. Report. Not concluding, predicting. Situations change every day. With every additional piece of new information, new considerations will be added, and the situation must be reevaluated. Raphael sounded sure worried a lot. But it had a point. If we were to rely on such biased views, we might find ourselves in a huge setup later. The Empire is indeed acting weird. Perhaps my shadows were not competent enough. I wanted to investigate myself, it's just that. Sao was busy investigating the internal affairs of the Western nations. His subordinates Dark Shadow had their own missions as well. That was why he could only let the low-tier monster called the Shadow handle the matter. Although they were ranked E monsters, they were capable of using shadow movement and telepathy net. It was the perfect monster for reconnaissance. Yet these monsters were unable to break through the barrier that protected the Empire. Moreover, it would be difficult to dispatch more people on the matter. Given the fact that he was sending people to places with unknown threats for their mission, Sao could only entrust the task to people he approved of. If he were to withdraw these people from their current mission, it would go against my orders. Sao was a competent man, but he wasn't omnipotent. Even though Sao had evolved, he could only send out 6 clones at the same time. That was usually his trump card when dealing with dangerous jobs. He also needed some reserved as backups for unexpected situations. Sao was concerned that if he were to send out all of his clones to investigate the Empire, there wouldn't be enough forces protecting me. The Empire's intentions are really not that important. It's just that some councillors were exaggerating things in the hope that the council would agree to the addition of Tempest into the council. With that being said, since Sao Dono is so concerned about the matter, allow us to help investigate. It seemed that Hinata was just like Raphael-san. Neither would be too overconfident in their views. I knew she was very cautious, but to witness it with my own eyes truly made me respect her even more. I wish to learn from her and act more discreetly in the future. Speaking of which, I didn't expect her to suggest helping investigate herself. Then do indulge me. Report. Please ask her to investigate the internal affairs of the armed nation of Dworgen, as well to confirm if military operation is possible in the underground capital. What a savage Raphael-san was, it even dared to use Hinata. Nonetheless, its view was very logical. There were roads that crossed the Dwarven kingdom within the Kanit Mountains. And that would be right under Gazel's purview. Well, I doubted the Empire could really do anything there. I suppose I could ask Hinata to look into it. Hinata-san, then there's something else I wish to request. What is it? Please investigate the structure of the Dwarven Kingdom as well. Dwarven Kingdom, you say? That city was constructed out of large caves at the bottom of the Canid Mountains. I see. There is that possibility. I knew it, though you look like a careless fellow, you are actually very cautious. Ahahaha, right. Got it. We will investigate the Dwarven Kingdom as well. I was not sure what quality of mine Hinata was admiring, but this should do. Although I felt like Raphael-san may be worrying too much, there was no such thing as absolute certainty in this world. Not long ago, I made up my mind about acting more cautiously, and if there were any potential threats, I would need to remove them quickly. And since Hinata agreed to help, there was no need to hold back. We discussed further in detail for a while. That afternoon, at that cafe, we casually went on about important matters that could be considered national secrets, although we did apply a sound isolation barrier to mute our conversation from the outside, which was why no one else would hear about our very important conversation. In times like these, having a skill like that was really convenient. Hinata explained many other things to me later as well. It ranged from many topics, not just military. Many people seemed to be tempted to manipulate our nation. All in all, their human caution was very strong. I could relate to them, however, given I was once a human myself. Which was why I agreed with Hinata's view. Got it. There are people plotting to take advantage of you guys, so don't fall for their trap. To her words, I simply nodded in response. But whether I actually took her advice was a different matter. What do you mean? Are we going to get manipulated? Yes, perhaps in terms of the military. But regarding that, I actually agree, wouldn't it be in your interest as well? There would be conditions for joining the council. They seem to want to toss us the job of managing everything in the Great Jura Forest. We'd also act as the buffer for defending against the Empire. That seemed to be every nation's wish. No problem. With the number of wild monsters decreasing, there will be more people coming to the labyrinth. That's just what we want. Don't be too idealistic. The Order has seen firsthand how many scheming old foxes are in the council. They may order you to dispatch soldiers to their nations in order to suppress the threat of monsters. Normally speaking, no one wanted a foreign army in their land. But with monsters being a thing in this world, they were the common enemies of all humans. Therefore, it was only natural for everyone to try and reserve sufficient military forces. It was just like the Templar Knight Order of the Western Holy Church. Many nations would go so far as to employ other nations' armies. Proposal. We can utilize this opportunity to offer the military forces a favor. So not only could we have the council acknowledge us as a nation, but we could even send our army directly to other nations with proper justification. If that were the case, if any backlash were to ensue, we could use the military force to show them what's good. My homeland Japan used to do this as well. Oh, I see. Why not? Let them have it then. But it does kind of piss me off to know that they are exploiting us. But wouldn't that actually greatly increase our influence? I gave an evil grin, to which Benimaru and Sai immediately understood my meaning. Shuna smiled without saying anything. I suppose that meant that she agreed as well. There was no objection. In other words, we'd act according to my will tomorrow. Your expression looked super evil just now. Hinata looked at me, almost dumbfounded. She seemed to see through our thoughts. But she didn't say anything more. In other words, she approved. And so, our talk ended. Before leaving, Hinata suddenly recalled something and said this. By the way, there were a bunch of idiots who were up to no good. Don't you get careless now. It was a cautious reminder, telling me not to get angry and lose control. The council was divided. She was probably telling me not to judge everyone by a glimpse of what I would see. Seriously. Why are you so worried about a pacifist like me? I knew what to do even if Hinata hadn't reminded me. My answer to her was, you are worrying too much, then we bid farewell to her.